Our next guest tonight in the Honky Tonk Time Machine is a Grammy winner with 20 singles on the country chart, 6 of those top 5, and then a big #1 hit that we're going to get to. His name is John Berry, and his wife Robin Berry is with us tonight as well, so we get 2 for the price of 1.
I love that.
Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Good to be with you.
So tell us, we're going through a global pandemic right now. What have you two been up to lately? How have you been kind of spending your time while we can't get out and do anything?
Well, we were twiddling our thumbs and we were bored to death trying to figure out what we'd worked in the yard all we could work. And we had a friend come visit from Chicago who is a radio personality for many years at talk radio, and he's written several books and had a podcast. And after visiting with us for the weekend, he said, you two should have a podcast. And we're like, what? And
yeah. We all know that I don't talk very much. I just sing back up and work in the John Berry business world, but, don't put me out front. That's always been my thing.
Well, I decided to get a couple of microphones in my little studio and set up there at our old kitchen table that's upstairs, and we sat down and started talking and chatting, and it ended up coming across with something pretty good. But then we recorded a couple of episodes, and we said, we've kind of talked ourselves out. Why don't we get some friends to join us? And so each week now we have a special guest. And this past week we aired a conversation we recorded on July 1st with Charlie Daniels. And, of course, he passed away 5 days later. And it was a very special conversation. We've known Charlie for a long time. I was managed by his management company for 5 years, and it was a real special time that he shared with us.
And the name of the podcast, it's called Faith, Family, and Friends, because, there's not really anything more important than those 3 things, our faith and our family and our friends. And so our objective is really to get our guests to talk about their faith, family, and friends and how it's impacted their career and their personal life. And we have gotten some of the most amazing stories, heartfelt conversations, things that people would not normally hear in an interview with these folks. And it's really, really been very touching.
It's not unlike what we do here with our show. We try to have a different guest on each week. And I think we've had some of the same guests from what I can tell. So it's pretty cool. You mentioned Charlie Daniels. We did a little Charlie Daniels tribute special when he passed away. And the fact that you did that interview and you were one of the last people to talk to him, how devastated were you when you heard the news? Because I know you'd worked together in the past, but also what does it feel like to be one of the last people to have that conversation with him?
Well, it was devastating. Matter of fact, there were some times I didn't listen to our interview that we recorded on July 1st until just 3 weeks ago, when I went to go edit the podcast.
And I kept asking John, I'm like, why is this taking you so long to get through this?
Yeah, and I said, well, there's times that I just have to pause and walk away. I mean, it's just so emotional to, matter of fact, the very opening, because I called Charlie on the phone, and we recorded the conversation, and the very first thing he picks up the phone, and man, when I heard his voice, I just had to hit the pause button. I had tears rolling down my face, and just knowing that I'd never hear that again.
Surreal to then just have that on tape, and something that you'll have forever, though.
Yeah, most of the podcasts run about 35 minutes. This one runs right almost in an hour because I just cleaned it up. I didn't take anything out. I wanted everybody to hear what Charlie had to say because there'll be no more conversations.
And it's really quite remarkable, not to give it away because it won't give it away, but in the first 19 minutes of the interview, Charlie mentions being in heaven 3 times.
Oh, wow.
It's unbelievable.
He shares his faith openly.
He shares his faith. There's a tear in his eyes. He lays out the plan of salvation, and it just really is a very, very special conversation.
So how can folks listen to the podcast?
Well, they can subscribe. They go to johnberry.com, and it's a monthly subscription or an annual subscription. And there's 2 different levels. One is just the podcast and a monthly email. And the other one...
it's almost like a the old-fashioned fan club, you get all these other things that promote JB community and give us access to folks in a way that we've never had access before, and gives them free tickets to Faith, Family, and Friends pre-show VIP events, and they just get all kinds of stuff for the second level. So makes it a lot of fun. Yeah. We have had some incredible guests. It's not all musicians. We have got politicians, football coaches, athletes. We have got folks from all different walks of life as part of this.
That's very, very cool. And I love the fact that you make faith a focal point of it. And we try not to shy away from that either on this show. We've had Jody Messina and Dina Carter and Josh Turner on, all talking about their faith, because I think it's important to share that with people, share that with the world.
Oh, absolutely. We're called to.
Exactly right. For those who don't remember, our listeners probably do remember, in 1997, you were actually nominated for CMA Vocal Event of the Year with Charlie Daniels and Hell Ketchum on another take on Long-Haired Country Boy. So what was it like to work with those two and be a part of that?
That was a fun day. I'm telling you. we shot that video on the front porch. We recorded the song at Charlie's studio there at Twin Pines Ranch. And we shot the video on the log cabin front porch of their. They've got an office on the property there, and it was just a perfect setting to shoot that video. And then the main part of the video, then of course we shot footage in the studio as well. It was a great day.
Did you come up just kind of idolizing him? Did you become a fan of him a little bit later in your life? What was that fanhood like?
No, when I was in high school, Charlie was all over the radio, and it was a trip when we got to go play the Charlie Daniels Volunteer Jam, because I had heard it was the concert of legend when I was in high school. The Volunteer Jam, that was quite the deal. So it was a real thrill to be a part of that. And when I was represented by Charlie's management company, David Corlew and his team, that was just a lot of fun to get to know Charlie and be around them.
The first time John ever met Charlie, he had a huge impact on him. It was, I think, in the early 80s, maybe? Mid-80s?
It was mid-80s. Let me think. I was playing, I had won a contest in Charlotte, North Carolina. And somebody from that contest had heard me play, and they asked if I would come with my band and we could play about a 45-minute set prior to the Charlotte Motor Speedway 500 race, NASCAR race. And we were there, and we heard a knock on the door of our van, and we opened the door. It was really, really hot, crazy hot. And they said, Charlie Daniels is here, and the RV we had for him, the air conditioner broke. Could he come sit in this cooled-off van with y'all till he sings the national anthem? And we were like, come on, we're redneck boys. But Charlie got in the van, and he sat back there, and he was so kind to us. And he was no different to us, these little redneck boys from Georgia, that he had no idea who we are, than the day when I signed with his management company many years later, to the other day when we had a conversation on the phone, July 1st. He was just as kind every single time I saw him. And that's just who he was.
That is really cool. That is so awesome. So John and Robin, how long have you two been married?
32 years.
32 years.
I was hoping you'd get that right.
Long enough to finish each other's sentence.
You don't have to sleep on the couch tonight, John. You got it right.
That's right.
Tell us, how'd you meet? How'd you fall in love? What's that story?
Oh, my gosh. I always let him tell this story, but I guess I was 19, and I was a student at the University of Georgia, and was on a date, and went into this little hole-in-the-wall place, and you could order dinner, and there was this guy sitting up there singing songs, and that's.
Yeah, it was me and my bass player, Michael, who still plays bass with me. And I knew exactly what songs I was smitten when I saw her. She was sitting there with her friend and their 2 dates. And I played all the right songs to bore those boys to death, and they went to the back room to shoot pool. And we took a break, and I sat down next to Robin. The first thing I said to her, I said, "When are we getting married?"
Oh,
I was surprised I didn't get a pool cue across the head.
Yeah, well, it took about 2 years before I'd go out with him. I thought my mama would kill me if I went out with a guy who made a living sitting on a bar stool playing songs in clubs. And I thought, he's too old for me.
Yeah.
I mean, there was only 6 years difference.
Yeah,
but when you're in college.
The difference between 19-year-old and 25-year-old, that's a lot of years.
Yeah, so 2 years later, I finally went out with him. He drove me crazy for 2 years. And then we went out, and I went back to college, and I came home that Christmas, and I thought, I'm going to tell this guy to leave me alone. He calls me 5 or 6 times a day. He sends me flowers every week. And I said, he's driving me crazy. So I came home the middle of December on college break, and he was at my house, and I was going to tell him, I don't want to go out with you anymore. We saw each other every day for 2 weeks, and on New Year's Eve, he asked me to marry him. Never said, let's date. Never said, I love you. Never even said, I like you. He asked me to marry him and offered me a ring, and wow, that's a wild story.
When you know what you want, you go and get it, huh, John?
Yeah.
That's all. And the fact that you made your very first move when she was on a date, that took some guts.
I was a bold young man, or foolish young man. I don't know.
Maybe.
Backing up before that, you grew up in South Carolina, is that right?
Actually, we both did. Robin's from Anderson, South Carolina,
okay.
And I'm from Aiken, South Carolina. And our family moved to Atlanta, Georgia, when I was 8 years old, and I lived a lot of my life there. And then when I was 24, I moved to Athens. I got a gig playing up there, and I ended up playing clubs there for 8 years before I got my record deal.
Really long enough that he should have a PhD or something.
Yeah.
And is that where you're still at? Are you still in Athens?
No, we live just north of Nashville now.
Okay.
While we're doing our business, and we love Athens and that area. And who knows, we might end up back there someday. So,
well, the reason I ask, kind of about your background and upbringing is that I'd heard that you're a big fan of John Denver. So I wanted to kind of get an idea of some of the other musicians you idolize coming up.
Yeah, I love John Denver, and stylistically very similar. But I loved Cat Stevens and Harry Chapin. Jim Croce, and then I discovered, of course, the Eagles came out around that same time and had great music, and then Fleetwood Mac followed, and Doobie Brothers, and some of that Southern rock stuff was cranking up with the Allman Brothers and Skynyrd, and I had a pretty wide range of music that I listened to, and I even had a Barry Manilow song, I think, on my.
I would not have thought that.
A little bit of everything.
Oh yeah, that was just a mix of all sorts of crazy stuff.
So when this show airs, I'm going to feature most of your music, but we're going to sprinkle some other stuff in there too. So I want to drop in some John Denver. So if you had to pick what John Denver song I would play, what would you recommend?
I'd say Annie's song. That's a real impactful song for me.
Great.
I play that one still quite a bit.
Great.
And we
choice.
play that one live, and it's a lot of fun. We do some really cool 3-part harmonies and big acoustic guitars, and people just always have a great reaction to that song.
John, I understand you were in a motorcycle accident pretty early on, age 21. And I hesitate to say blessing in disguise because I would imagine it was a pretty traumatic experience. But if there was some good that came out of it, is the fact that you were able to really kind of master the guitar during your recovery period, right?
Well, I don't know if master would be the term I would use. But I did end up making a living playing guitar because of that motorcycle wreck. I broke both my femurs and my left hip, and I couldn't go back to the assembly plant I was working at the time. Couldn't walk around and do that kind of work, but I could sit on a stool and play the guitar, and that's about all I've done since.
Was it during that time that you decided that you might want to try to make a run at this and move to Nashville? And if not, when did that time come?
I didn't come to Nashville for years and years and years. I mean, we didn't start really coming to Nashville until 1992.
Okay.
Yeah, all because of the Joe Diffie song.
Yeah, Ships That Don't Come In. That song inspired me to, I was making a really good living and provided for us. We held, by the time we left that piece of land, we had 150 acres. Built this little house and barn and office. But I heard this Joe Diffie song one night. It was a brand new song by Joe, and I was got home and woke Robin up, and I said, I heard this song by Joe, and it just made me realize that I had dreamed bigger than just being a big fish in a little pond of Athens, Georgia. And we stayed up all night, came up with a plan to go to Nashville and do an industry showcase once every 6 weeks and do that for a year, see if we could garner any attention. And if we could, great. If we couldn't, we'd punt. And we went up and did our first industry showcase in May of 1992 and ended up meeting a guy named Honky Williams, who introduced me to Jimmy Bowen, who ran Capitol Records. Came up, did a private showcase for Mr. Bowen, and got a record deal. Instead of doing an industry showcase once every 6 weeks for a year, we did one.
I think 9 people were there.
Yeah.
It was really, we were sorely disappointed, but God knew, and he put the right person there at the right time. And
the person that needed to be there was there.
Absolutely. Ships That Don't Come In's another great song. I'm going to write that one down and play that one too. Joe's another one who, not long before Charlie, Joe passed away unexpectedly. I would imagine.
And Kenny Rogers.
And Kenny.
Rogers. I was just, oh, gosh.
John Prine. It's been a rough year for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mac Davis here recently, and Helen Reddy too. Did you get to meet Joe and have any type of relationship with him after having that song inspire you to get to Nashville?
I actually had the opportunity last year. We played the Opry at the same time and the same night. And I had an opportunity to chat with him and tell him the story of hearing that song and what an impact. It was a life-changing opportunity that was presented from hearing that song, and it was just very inspiring. And he was really moved and gave me a big hug, and
Yeah, I would imagine as an artist that might be the biggest compliment you could get, that your music inspired somebody to do something huge in their lives. And I would bet that you've had people come to you with similar stories, maybe not inspired me to move to Nashville, but your song touched my life in some way. I mean, you've had some huge, impactful hits. Have you been able to experience that yourself as an artist?
Well, we just experienced it Sunday night.
Okay.
We played at a church in Monroe, Georgia, and
after the concert was over, this guy just came up on the stage
and grabbed the microphone. He said, "Y'all, I need to tell y'all something." And everybody stopped, and he said, "Years ago," he said, "I was not in a good place in my relationship with my wife, and just how he was going to be leaving, and he heard this song that I recorded with Wynonna Judd called 'We Can't Unmake Love.'" And it talks about the little girl that's upstairs, and that song inspired him to figure out how to make things right for her. And because he said, if I hadn't heard that song, my daughter would have grown up without a daddy. He said, I was out of there. And now he's welcomed his first grandchild. And he was just so grateful. And he just wanted folks to know how impactful. He said, I don't know if John's got a song that's impacted you the way it has me, but just wanted to let you folks know this man's got music that has changed my life. Pretty impactful moment right there.
What a title and what an idea for a song. We Can't Unmake Love. So you mentioned you get to Nashville in 1992. 1993 rolls around and you get your first 2 singles out on the radio. You hadn't had the big one yet. That comes later. But your first 2, did pretty well. Kiss Me in the Car was top 25. Mind of Her Own was top 40. What was that time like when you kind of get your first little taste of success right there in 1993?
It was exciting. It was a lot of fun. We were still, I think at that point we were still playing club in Athens and just having a lot of fun with that. And
still living in Athens.
Yeah, still lived in Athens. We lived in Athens till 1999. And but it was exciting, and we were starting to make plans to go on the road and starting getting that all together, and it was getting after years of dreaming about it, it was starting to turn into a reality. It was pretty nice.
And then the big one, Your Love Amazes Me, number one hit. I would say it's the biggest hit of your career. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so that's one of those career songs.
How did that song land in your hands, and what did you think when you first heard it, John?
Well, a guy named Chuck Jones was writing for Great Cumberland Music in Nashville, who I worked with, a guy who ran that, Chuck Howard. And Chuck Howard was producing the record. And Chuck Jones was a writer there. And so he was introducing me to some of Chuck's music. And I had a demo tape at that time of Chuck's songs. And I ended up, half the songs on my debut album with Capitol were written by Chuck. And he's just a tremendous writer. And the first time I heard it, I said, I'll take that one. And they said, well, can't have that one. Tanya Tucker's putting it on her next record. And I said, well, if something happens and she doesn't use it, I want to be first in line. And she ended up turning her record in, completed it, and I was able to record that. And it was her, Your Love Amazes Me was not on her completed record. And so she didn't use it. So it fell to me. So I'm grateful.
Wow, that's amazing how that works out. And doing these interviews, I find there are a lot of stories like that where a certain artist passes on a song and it goes to somebody else. And, you know, it's like a what could have been moment. It's very interesting how that all works out. It's like you said, though, God has that plan for you.
Yeah, certain songs fit. They find their way to who's supposed to sing them.
Yeah.
I can't remember what album I was working on, but we were in the studio and I recorded a song and we all just looked at each other and went, no, that's just not me. That's a girl song. And then Faith Hill had a hit with the song Breathe.
Just Breathe.
Oh, yeah. That could have been yours? I didn't know that.
Make sense of the guy singing it. Just didn't work.
Yeah. That's true. I think it would have been a little strange, but wow, I had no idea. Robin, what was that like for you? You know, as the wife of John, as now he is kind of at that pinnacle of success right there with now a number one hit out on country radio. What was that time like for you?
Well, actually, it was awful.
Really?
It's just,
yeah.
I was on the road with John singing backup, and my mom, and we had our daughter on the road. She was probably about 3.5, and I was also pregnant with our son, with our second child. And John just started to get really bizarre. A lot of people don't know this story. He just started to get really weird, and he's mean, very mean. And he decided that I didn't need to be out there anymore with him, and that we needed to go home, and he didn't like me very much. So he sent me and my mom and Taylor Marie home, and as you can imagine, most women, you can imagine when you're pregnant, that is a very traumatic experience. So I was home for several months. I wouldn't hear from him, didn't talk to him. Your Love Amazes Me was screaming up the chart. I felt very abandoned, and it was truly one of the most awful times and most wonderful times. I just dug into my Bible. I yelled a lot at God, trying to make sense of it all. But God gave me my life verse from James chapter 1, verse 2. Consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds. And that word joy comes not from happiness, but joy comes from knowing the peace that we can get through Jesus. And through that time, that horrible, horrible time, God gave me peace. He told me that everything was going to be okay. And so the day I had the baby, I called John. I knew that Sean was probably going to arrive that day. I called. I got a hold of his management. I said, you need to have John call me. And he called, and I said, I'm pretty sure the baby's going to arrive today. You're going to need to get home for this. And he said, well, why don't you just call me and let me know that everything's okay? That was real sweet.
That didn't go well.
That didn't go very well. So anyway, I did deliver Sean that day, and John got in there probably 4 or 5 hours after Sean was born, and that's kind of when the whole thing started happening. They found John on the floor outside the nursery. A nurse came up, and that's when they discovered that he had a cyst in the middle of his brain that was blocking the spinal cord. The fluid going down the spinal cord and kind of creating just a lot of pressure, and it had made him mean and changed him. And immediately within 10 days he was at Emory in Atlanta having brain surgery. On the same day that Your Love Amazes Me went to #1. So it was a very hard time for me, a very a time of growth and maturing in my faith with the Lord. But I knew when John woke up from surgery some 24 hours later, he looked at me in the eyes, and he was back to being my John. And
Wow.
just getting all of that pressure off the brain. And fortunately, he doesn't remember it all. He doesn't remember how mean he was and how unkind he was. And I guess that's kind of a blessing in disguise for him. I get to just leave those memories behind and just move on to a better life.
You didn't really get to celebrate the #1. The day it goes #1, you guys are in the hospital, huh?
In the hospital.
Yeah.
I was there for another week or so.
I actually took the chart. I had it blown up. He kept asking me, it was a big thing when that chart came out on those days.
Yeah,
It's
R&R
a big
chart
thing.
came in every Monday.
Yeah, how'd I do on the chart? So I took the chart, I blew it up, I highlighted it with a yellow marker, and I just kept reminding him, I put it right there by his bed, that, hey, baby, you got your first #1. And so it really was celebratory and good.
But the real story is what, how God used Robin and changed me physically with the surgery, but the strength God gave her to go from being basically abandoned and during that last trimester of her pregnancy to being my nurse, and taking care of me while taking care of a new baby and a little girl. So she's a strong woman.
That is amazing, Robin. My hat is off to you. From there, the career is going pretty good there, John. I mean, you had 4 or 5 more top 5 singles in a row right after that, and I want to start with What's in It for Me, which is the follow-up single.
Well, that's a song written by Gary Burr, and I think on all those early records, all the Capitol records, and even the Lyric Street record, I had a Gary Burr song on every one, I think. He's a great writer, and that song was just up-tempos for me are kind of hard to find, and but Gary's got a gift of writing with the right kind of message, up-tempo songs with the right kind of message for me.
Oh, and it has the coolest twin guitar solo in it.
Oh, yeah, sure does.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, the next one then, and this would have been the last release from that debut album, which the debut album I absolutely love, but You and Only You.
You and Only You was written by Chuck Jones and J.D. Martin, and, of course, Chuck being the writer of Your Love Amazes Me. It's just one of my favorite melodies to sing, and the song did really, really well, and it was still living on radio when we got to the release of the album Standing on the Edge. So Jimmy Bowen, the president of the Capitol, included that song on that album as well.
Night after night, anybody asks me what's my favorite song that John sings, that is hands down just my favorite. I mean, there's so much passion in it, and the video that actually we did that came out on CNT was one of the first live audio videos that came out. It wasn't just a video; it was actually all live audio, and that was really cool.
Yeah, we shot that. We were on the Reba McEntire's show at.
We were on the road. The show, The Road.
Yeah, and we shot it at TPAC.
Yeah.
in Nashville, and it was part of Reba's. We were there on the show with Reba. But anyway, it was live. I forgot all about that. Yeah,
live audio.
And live audio and live video.
You see that from time to time, but are you saying that was kind of one of the first instances of that back in mid-90s?
Yeah, other than,
Back in the 90s, there weren't a lot of live videos airing on TNT.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So Standing on the Edge was your next album, like you said, and then my favorite song off of that album was the lead single, Standing on the Edge of Goodbye. What can you tell me about that one, John?
That's a song I wrote that was just inspired by a conversation I had with a friend of mine who he just, was pouring out his heart, and he'd said had been having troubles in his marriage, and he said, I just feel like she's standing on the edge of the driveway looking for somewhere else to go. And I'm like, man, that sounds like a song to me. And I wrote the chorus, and I had the chorus forever. And Chuck Howard, the guy who was producing my records at the time, heard it. He said, you know what? You need to finish that, and you need to get together with Stuart Harris, who wrote No One Else on Earth for Winona.
Okay.
And help you finish that song. And I got together with him, and 2 hours later, we were done. And it was pretty cool.
Tell me about I Think About It All the Time.
Once again, a fun, up-tempo song, which, like I said before, it's hard for me to find those. But it's just one that really, it just spoke to me, and I love playing it even still now. 20-something years later, it's just one of those songs I look forward to playing, and we've closed the show with it for years. And
it's rocking.
It's rocking.
Yeah. And I was going to say, and I would imagine all these songs I've mentioned are probably still a part of your live show, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the best pieces of advice I got from Chuck Howard when we were working together on the first album. He said, always choose songs that you love to sing. Don't choose songs because the record label wants you to do it. Or he said, make sure you love it because you got to sing it.
Right.
And, he said the one time you do a song that the label wants you to do because they think it'll be a hit and you hate it, but you do it anyway, it'll be a monster and you'll be stuck singing that the rest of your life.
It's funny you mentioned that because Leroy Parnell came on my show. I think he came on your podcast as well, didn't he?
No, he was part of our Songs and Stories TV series.
Yeah.
The reason I bring him up is because he mentioned something very similar to me about a song that he recorded because the label wanted him to, but he doesn't include it in his live show, even though it was a hit, because he just never really connected with it, didn't really like it. So you guys said almost the exact same thing right there.
Yeah. How about that? Do you remember what song it was?
It was A Little Bit of You, which was a pretty big hit for him. I think it was like a number 2 and a song that I actually like.
Well, that song here is On the Road. I love that song.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that one too. It's one of my favorites. As far as my favorite song of yours, though, John, I'd have to say She's Taking a Shine.
Come on.
I love Your Love Amazes Me, but I was a kid when all these songs came out, and for some reason, She's Taking a Shine just resonates with me as my favorite song of yours. I love that song. What can you tell me about that one?
Well, that was written by...
He's a dentist.
Well, one guy was a dentist. I can't remember his name.
I can't either.
And the other guy who co-wrote it with is a backup singer on a lot of my records, Greg Barnhill.
Oh, that's right.
And Greg was the male harmony voice with me on the my first debut album, and maybe into the next one, and then on Faces, we included that song, and he was one of the writers. So it was really cool to have him there, not only singing backup, but singing backup on a song that he wrote. And that was pretty cool.
And once again, it's just it's an up-tempo song that has a good, happy, positive feel to it. And so Night After Night, of course, that's one that's always on the set list.
And just the content of the song, the girl that constantly gets overlooked until she falls in love, and it kind of changes everything about her. It makes her a brand new person, and now people are starting to take notice, now that she's a little happier. I love it. Love the content.
Yeah, so just how the power of love will change somebody from the inside out.
No doubt about it. So if we had time, I would go through every single one of your songs and talk about them, but we don't, unfortunately, have time for that. But is there any song that I didn't touch on or mention that you feel like needs mentioned or has a story behind it that you wanted to let us know about?
I had a EP come out last year called Thomas Road.
Yeah.
And there's a song on there called The Richest Man that I wrote with a couple of friends, and was inspired by my dad, by his life. And because my dad taught me and my brother and my sister a lot of things about life, and was always talking about things that were important in life, and it never had anything to do with money. And my father was not a wealthy man. He was actually very on the poor side of life and financially. And but he knew what was important in life. And it, like I said, it seldom had anything to do with money, and had to do with friends and family and faith, and those are the things that were valuable.
I actually just listened to that this morning as I was getting ready for this interview, and I got to say, I loved it. It's really, really good.
Thank you.
And yeah, the EP is called Thomas Road, and was there 6 songs on there?
I think that's correct. I think it's 6.
Yeah, so that's your latest project. I also didn't want to let you go without talking about this Christmas. You actually do a Christmas tour every single year. This is your 24th year of it, and you'll be coming to Branson with Rhonda Vincent. Your show dates with Rhonda are November 19th through the 22nd. We're excited to see you in Branson. I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
I'm excited about being there and being a part of Rhonda's show. They're giving me about a 30-minute set, so I'm going to do a few Christmas songs and some of the big hits, and it'll be quick. It'll be a quick 30 minutes, but it'll be a lot of fun to be there with her. She's a real joy to be around, and she's a special person and good friend. And I don't know. I guess I've heard I played in Branson, but I don't recall.
I remember.
It was a post-brain surgery time, I guess. I don't really remember all that.
I remember us being in Branson. We had the kids with us, and I don't remember which theater we played, but I remember being there for a couple of nights, and we just enjoyed our time there. It was very laid back and beautiful, and we had a good time.
It's tough to remember the theater names because they change all the time anyway, but one thing that sticks out about Branson, especially around Christmas time, is it's beautiful. It's lit up. It really brings you into that Christmas spirit. And John, your Christmas music is awesome. What's your favorite Christmas song?
Oh, Holy Night.
Oh, yeah.
I love singing that song.
Awesome.
That's a piece of music.
Yeah, I'm amazed there's so many people, they recognize the song, John's version of Oh Holy Night, before they would Standing on the Edge, or I think about it all the time. A lot of people put Oh Holy Night synonymous with John Barry, and that's really special.
Cool. That's pretty cool.
Is that your favorite too, Robin, or do you have a different one?
You know, I love Oh Holy Night. But I love our version of Oh Come All You Faithful.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to stand up and just, I don't know, it's just happy and joyful and makes me feel good. And, yeah, I love Christmas.
And going back to Rhonda, she's a Missouri girl as well. We love her here. Have you been able to work with her before, or will this be your first time?
We've done a couple of things together over the years, not a lot, but we had her on our Songs and Stories TV series.
Yeah.
And it was terrific to have her on that. And she's just so talented, you know.
She is
she's
so talented.
Sweet person.
I'll have to go and check that out with Rhonda. Songs and Stories. So tell me more about that.
Songs and Stories is actually 2 seasons of a TV show where it's like 30 minutes, and it was on Heartland Network, and actually it's getting ready to be re-aired on another network. But then during quarantine, I mean, literally, we were twiddling our thumbs and had our first grandchild born, and John's like, man, I'd like to read her stories.
Yeah, so we videotaped. We not videotaped, but we shot little footage of singing some little songs, children's songs, and reading little children's stories. And it turned into this little 15-minute thing that we would do.
Songs and Stories for Kids with Papa Bear.
And we do it every Sunday night. We did that up, I guess, through September. We did it.
Yeah, now it's just going to come out just sort of at holidays and special times. But it was quite an eye-opening thing for us to undertake. We're not real tech savvy, so it was
learning how to. Robin took on she was the producer.
And the editor, and oh, gosh.
Yeah, so learning how to edit video and put it all together. That's a lot of fun, and
now it's there for kids to go and watch
Yeah.
it on John's YouTube channel at John Berry Music. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's a school teacher in Georgia, and she said, you know what? She said, my friends use those stories in their classrooms when they're covering a specific book or topic. And I thought, oh, that is so cool.
Well, it has been such a pleasure talking to you guys this morning. I've had fun. Hopefully you have too. For people who want to pick up your latest album, Thomas Road, what's the best way to do so? Is it just go wherever you download music? Is that the best way to do it these days?
of course they can do that, or they can go to johnberry.com
And get a hard copy.
And get a physical copy, and Robin will print the label and all boxed up in the garage, and we'll send it to you.
And then, and then it's on all the normal Spotify, Amazon, and all of those places as well. But the podcast is Faith, Family, and Friends is also available through johnberry.com. And johnberry.com is kind of the mainstay. You can go there to find out anything and more information than you want to know about John Berry.
Well, we can't wait to see you in Branson this Christmas. I sure appreciate your time. Anything else you'd like to add, or anything I might have missed before we let you go, John and Robin?
Well, we're just looking forward to being there, and we appreciate Rhonda inviting us to be a part of the show, and we really can't wait to be in Branson.
That's right.